let's do roll call. I'm going to be jumping back and forth here. Trevor, I'm here. Jessica?
Here.
Bronwyn?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Khalil?
Here.
All right. Georgina?
She let me know she would not make it today.
Thank you. Mildred? Jesse notified us unable. And Chuck?
I'm here.
Fantastic. Well, good morning. And if those who did not notice, we are just above 12 hours of light now. So we have a great day to celebrate, even though it may be below zero. We do have more light. So we're on our way. So thrilled to see everybody. And just want to finalize the agenda. Is there anything that we want to add? Hearing none, I'll just, at some point, we'll probably want an update from Christina on the I call it RFP, but I think it's RFG for the capital projects that we put out. We'll add that to the agenda, so please remind me. But otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Khalil.
Thank you, Khalil. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any comments, changes? Hearing none, does anybody object or abstain? Hearing none, it passes unanimous. Fabulous. We have public comment next. Is anybody here to speak for public comment? And please just unmute and say with sharing screen, I can't always see everybody. Now I can, thank you. I like it. Okay. Hearing no public comment, we will close and we'll continue. Great. Let me go back to my agenda. All right, we will start with new business. ACE Fund budget update and discussion. Turning that over to Austin and Christina.
Chair, did you want Christina to give the update on the RFGP now, or did you want to do it later?
What would you two like? I'm fine with how and what works best for you.
What do you think, Christina?
Sure, I can do it really quickly.
Fabulous, go for it. Thank you.
So just as a reminder, the RFGP opened on March 5th. Very exciting. And it closes on April 10th at noon. We have a notable highlight that there is a pre-proposal conference today. So if those are interested, that will be at noon, shortly after this meeting. That conference will be held here at City Hall in conference room 525. There's also a call-in number, which is 907-343-6089 for those that are interested. I'm sharing screen to our website at the Get Involved page. There is a lot of helpful resources here. So if you're interested, please check out this website or forward this information and opportunity to anyone who you think might be interested. And as a reminder, there is technical assistance available for applicants through this process, and that's with AgNewBek. And that information is here on the website also.
Fantastic. What a great improvement of getting information out and resources. Thank you to the team for that. Christina, when do you think, or Austin, will the process close? And then what is like the target date of approval? And then hopefully soon after the money starts rolling out?
Austin, you want to talk a little bit about the process last year?
Sure. Yeah, so we're running the period for 5 weeks. So proposals will be due by April 10th. What happened last year was that it took about a week for proposals to come through purchasing and to get to the evaluation committee that has been established. So I would assume by mid-April, the evaluation committee would have proposals and then have an opportunity to review those and meet. And I'm not sure, Christina, if you guys have set that up yet, but I'm sure AHD will be setting that up soon for toward the end of April. And then the process is pretty quick. AHD gets it to the assembly who needs to approve it. So I would assume by sometime in May, maybe late May, the funding should be approved and then contracts could be worked out after that. So we're not as early as we want to be, but we're earlier than last year. So we just keep improving, hopefully.
Fantastic. And just to share with the board in conversation with Christina and Austin plus Bill, the goal is to even try to get these work out a process where we can actually do these maybe before year end, if we do these next year. So the dollars come out more closer to January, the latest February. So we're slowly but surely working on the process and that timeline. So thank you all for that. Any questions on that? Again, when there's a shared screen, please just unmute. Hearing none, let's continue on with updating on the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So our first conversation today is a budget update. So this is the perfect time to have this conversation. As a reminder, the budget that you all initially set, the way the process works is that's set in November prior to the calendar year. So that process you all did in August and up until the start of January got us to where we are today. After the first quarter of the year, there was a process where we look at how we ended up. So how did our first quarter go as far as the revenues? Are the revenues as expected? Are the expenses as predicted? And we see where we are with that. So this is what we're going to be doing today as part of our conversation. We will be reviewing the budget and making recommendations on anything that is needed. And then we propose that to the mayor's office and the assembly considers and passes the final budget, usually in April. So we do know after digging in that revenue was less than expected in 2025 and 2026. So we will need to consider some adjustments today. And another piece from the proposition highlights that part of our role as the board is to review financial reports and audits and spending and making sure everything is consistent with the muni rules and regulations, and also that our fund is being managed responsibly in a transparent manner and with the highest standards of care and accountability to the public. So it's a good time for us to dive into that conversation today. So here is a budget overview that kind of shares what occurred in 2024, 25, and 26. So we'll just take a minute to walk through this, looking at confirmed revenues in 24 were 6 million. I don't know if you can see this because if I stop sharing at the top button or if you can see it clearly, but it was $6,483,349. Subtracting the confirmed expenses, as you know, in 2024, there were not any programs, so there were minimal expenses there. And we had a good chunk to carry forward into 2025. So the 2025 box shows that carry forward. We add in the confirmed revenues of 2025. And that combined revenue gives us a starting point. You can see the confirmed expenses for 2025 and where we ended up. One thing I want to highlight is it says less 2025 indirect costs. And so there's about 5% that's taken out of each revenue year for processing the tax funds. So that highlights that there. So again, out of 2025, we had some funds carrying over into the 2026 budget. So looking at 2026, that carry forward combined with our projected revenues gave us a combined revenue of 8 million. I do want to note that that projected revenue for 2026 was initially higher at 6.1. And that now it's been adjusted. So our projected expenses for 2026 was 8,680,000. We did have some funds carry over from last year, so we're adding in those funds. That was from Alaska Family Services. If you'll remember it last month in our presentation, there was some return funds there. So that gives us our total bottom line. We've got a projected overspend for 2026 at the moment of about 460,000. So visually looking at it, we've got our 2024 revenues. And we layer in our expenses. So in this highlighted box, you can see again, the expenses were small for 2024. That carries over to 2025. Got our leftover funds. We add in our new tax revenues. We take out our projected 5%. And then our expenses there on top. So again, we were able to carry over funds into 2026. We take that leftover, we add the tax revenues, we subtract that 5%. But our proposed budgets are a little bit more than what we have. So circling back to the original 2026 budget, just as a reminder, since we were looking at a higher projection coming into 2026, the budget was set. These were the programs that and the amounts that we were looking at funding. We had added these 2 new programs to 2026, which was sector worker retention bonuses and startup funding for in-home providers. Those were to be a conversation to dive into. And I just want to add additionally, the assembly allocated Best Beginnings 125,000 to fund Imagination Library. And the transportation support to cover the closure of Boys and Girls Club, which was about 50,000. We have not needed to use those funds, as it seems like those families have found alternative solutions. So that's not something, but I just wanted to remind us that was in our budget.
Christina, this is Trevor. Where is the Best Beginning dollars in this? I see the ASD dollars, but where did we put the Best Beginning?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to update this with that. Ideally, there would be another colored box showing that. So it's just also in our budget for programs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we know we need to make a reduction, and I want to talk about some considerations that we want to, when we're looking at possible reductions. We know we want to prioritize existing programs. Pilot and capital funds were already less than the 2025 allocation. I think it's important that we're mindful of the assembly priorities. We intend to spend allocated admin funds. So circling back to admin costs, that funding is set aside for board administration. That includes, not limited to, cost of staff, contractors, data collection, studies, research, and any required audits. So in 2024, we were just collecting revenue. We didn't have high admin expenses, just board administration, and Austin as the interim ED. In 2025, a lot of that shifted, right? So we developed and implemented programs. And now in 2026, we have grown by adding 2 full-time positions. We have ongoing programs that we're managing. And now we also have Austin support through the end of April. So we are intending to spend all of that 10% admin funds this year, which we had budgeted for. We budgeted for the 10% in 2025. We just didn't use all of those funds at that time. So that's a good reminder. We know that operational assistance was one of the number one sector identified need, and many of our programs are scalable, which means we still have the opportunity to make some reductions while still reaching our intended goals. So Austin and Trevor and I have been talking about this and exploring options. I've been working tirelessly with the Muni to crunch final budget numbers and revenue estimates and making sure we have the best information for these decisions. We want to keep in mind that our revenue estimates could still shift downward even more at a later date. So some low-hanging fruit would be to pause on starting the 2 new programs. That can cut $500,000 without reducing any current programs. So that would be able to help us accomplish our current deficit. In order to be prepared in the event further reductions are needed, we would be wise to identify in this conversation also where we would do so, where we would look at reducing if needed. So thinking about the considerations that we mentioned in the last slide, we know that operational assistance is the most utilized program, and we'd like to avoid reducing that, given how much that funding is split among the many awardees. That's reaching almost the entire population of licensed childcare programs. The Anchorage School District pre-K could likely not sustain a reduction without having to cut a classroom. So that's a consideration. And early educator subsidies are scalable in nature in the sense that we can make a lower monthly payment if needed, yet still cover as many participants that have been utilizing this program. So we had agreed this was the most logical program to reduce if needed, and would like to look at that in this discussion. So I think it's a good time. I know Austin also has prepared a worksheet, right, Austin, that we can kind of look at and play with some of these numbers, but I think it's a good time to open up for discussion.
And just before we do that, just to share just say thank you to Austin and Christina, just so you know, getting all these numbers and working with finance, one would think it was easy, necessarily had some challenges to get this all together to give you all the best picture. So just want to recognize that work and that effort, and this is well set out. When I met with them, one of the things that I put forward and when looking at this was from day one of we've been talking about our programs, we wanted to make sure that whatever we did was as sustainable as possible, recognizing that if we started something that it just wouldn't vanish because that has a rippling effect unless there was a need for it to vanish, not just money, that it wasn't working or something of that nature. And then obviously the second piece was really thinking back to all of our surveys of and through public comment and conversations that have been had is what would have the most impact on our sector and what was the need made by those who are directly in that work. So number one thing everybody said was those grants that we give directly, unrestricted, and then workforce. So really prioritizing those. Um, and we pick the new programs because it takes more time and effort to establish a new program and thinking about coming years. So we know revenue's going down. You can also see that our rollover dollars are basically going to be gone. So we're going to be around $5 million, potentially less, and our programs are above that. And the municipality has made decisions of like bringing ASD over. That was 2 million use that we weren't expecting. If we have to carry that through, that's now only 3 million for new programs with these dollars. And then Best Beginnings came over. So there's a lot of conversations that will be needed to have with administration and forward thinking, but we really wanted to make sure that we weren't set up for failure. And one of the ways of is at least maintaining what we have as we are developing the plan forward. So again, in conversation with Christine and Austin, that's how we got to where we are. So Austin, you want to bring up that document?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
And opening it up to board members, questions and or thoughts that you have of what's been shared.
Yeah, maybe I'll wait a second in case there's discussion, general discussion.
I would love to hear, yeah, I like what's being proposed. I like the thoughts, or I would like to suggest. I would love to hear from every board member because this is our primary responsibility and want to ensure that we are getting everybody's thoughts. So we're moving something forward. Chuck.
Morning, everybody. It's weird being online. I usually try to be in person, but my family has been very sick for the past week, so finally coming out of it, but figured I would give you a little bit of space still today. Carrying on the train of kind of making sure we're not pulling the rug out from under people. I think the first two recommendations make a lot of sense to me. The third one around the childcare subsidies, I just had questions around what would that look like? Like, have organizations and people already been promised a certain amount of funds, and this would then be a shock that they were like pretty confident or sure they were going to get, or what actually would that look like, and what would the actual kind of dollar amount per kid, or however you want to frame it, like what would that impact be if you dropped that funding?
Christina, do you want to answer that, or would you like me to?
Feel free. Yeah.
We can tag team it. So last year for the 6 months, the amount was 1.25 million for the early childcare subsidies. And initially AFS planned to pay for 75% of the state childcare subsidy amount that would typically be paid for each participant's kid. Not knowing, how many people would participate in the program, how much money would we need. And in the end, they had enough money to pay for those 6 months, the full amount that the state would fund for every participant and return $400,000 to us. So we felt pretty comfortable not doubling that 2025 amount because they weren't using all of it, even at a really high benefit amount per participant. And so I think we have room there. And what the numbers are, I don't know. There hasn't been a huge uptick in I shouldn't say I don't know. I don't know exact participation, if that will grow or not grow, but there hasn't been huge growth that we're aware of. And this year, still being a little more conservative, I think, to Member Barry's point of let's make sure participants know that we're not always going to pay 100%, right? We might not be able to do that. They were really good at messaging that. And this year they started with the assumption or the plan to pay 85% of that state amount. And so Participants know that it can vary. I reached out to Alaska Family Services last night and told them what we're doing and having this discussion and what this recommendation would be, and thank them for their partnership. And they responded and said, sounds good, keep us posted. Even during the 2026 budget process in the fall, there were a lot of conversations about how that amount might need to go up or down depending on assembly additions. And I think that a really great part about this program is that it's scalable, and they know that too. And there's been a lot of discussion about that and collaboration. So I feel pretty good about being able to reduce it pretty minimally.
Thank you.
If I can jump in next, I would just
Kevin.
echo what Chuck said. I'd like to know if we can, like, the dollar amount specifically to the families, though, not just the total dollar amount to the program. Just because I think my concern is, like you mentioned, that we did tell people we'd pay a portion of their childcare stuff, and they probably budgeted around an expectation that it'd be close to last year. And small amounts of money, especially for people who have multiple kids in this program, could add up pretty quickly. And these are folks who are not making a lot of money to begin with. So what we think of as maybe small impacts may be large. So if there's a program we can protect, I'd like to make sure, if we can, that we're providing as close to what we did last year as possible. Just so that people are getting consistent payments, right? Because we're leveraging these people. Like, every single one of them that we keep their kids in care, we get an additional 4 to 12 kids in care on top of it, right? And so, and then I just think, like, that program is more effective if people do believe they can count on it every year, even if they intellectually know that it's going to scale up and down, right? We all kind of build our household budgets based on income that we expect, and yeah, that's just my thought.
Well, and just to add to that, I want to clarify, because the families have been told that it can scale, like it can vary in terms of being more, just like it did last year. Sorry, I'm going to try and turn that. But they do have specific paperwork that says we're going to pay X amount per month for the rest of this year. Like, they have a set amount that they already know, and that isn't communicated in a way that might change. It's January 2026 to December 2026. They get this much per month. And so I just want to, when we're talking about changing things, is that going to affect that they've already been told, or is it just going to change that there might have been extra and now there won't be extra?
I guess, Branwen, or Member Collier, that's a good question. I'm not familiar, or I'm not aware of specific communication by AFS to all the families that they can expect the same amount throughout the year, but you might have access to that communication because you're seeing people who are participating in the program. So that's good feedback. So yeah, I don't know as much about it as you do, I guess, about that specific communication.
But Austin, this is Trevor. In our conversations, that we're expecting the same amount that we did at the beginning of last year, actually a little bit more, because it's 85 versus 75. And with that number, with current numbers, we will actually be under the 1.75. So there's room for that 1 to potentially 200,000 if we have to cut, which should not impact. And I think it does get to, unless we see a major increase of participation, which we may have to cap participation. So we're going to have to work with everybody very closely and monitor this to make sure that the money is there. And that would also give us more leeway, data to also, when we're talking to the municipality about, are we covering ASD and best beginnings and how these dollars are being utilized, it gives us data of going, hey, there is this need and this is the impact. So my understanding is there is that room and should not impact, but we're going to have to monitor. Correct?
I think what Christina and I will need to do is work with AFS. It's a pretty complicated formula, and there are a number of families, and they all get different amounts based on income and how, childcare subsidy, like, it's pretty complicated. And so I think we'll need to, if we want this level of detail, to know that there would not be a reduction for any participant in 2026. If we made a reduction in our budget, we would have to do that math with AFS, and it would take a little bit. So we can work on that, and we can talk about, it more conceptually, that if there is a reduction or there isn't, what the board wants to do. But I don't know, Christina, do you feel equipped to answer those kinds of detailed questions? I don't.
For sure not in the moment to say specifically exactly what it looks like. I will say conceptually looking at it, it's pretty likely that with the reduction of 1 to 200,000 as we're proposing, it wouldn't affect current participation as much as it would probably put a cap on how many new families we could accept into the program. So that's just, again, we can get details, but that's roughly based on participation and coverage at 100% and scaling that back this year to 85%. So that would probably be more likely. And I think as we gather the specific answers to those questions, something that you all could ponder is, if there wasn't a reduction to families, but we were capping participation, is that something that then we're okay with?
Right. Jessica.
Thanks. So I just wanted to also bring up the point that when we first started this program, we had a very limited application window at AFS, and we did open that to a rolling application because we didn't have the expected numbers applying for it. And because it was underspent, I would think that a small reduction would be okay. We could either like cap participation, create a waiting list. AFS could do that. Or, maybe if the same amount got paid to the families that are on there, programs that are on there, like maybe if there wasn't enough, it's just different for the families after a certain date or something, if that makes sense.
Definitely what I can do is, and Christina and Austin, is we can work with them and get some numbers and do some projections and be able to, and I think we're just going to have to monitor it to make sure that we all know what's going on and figuring that piece out. Kevin.
Nobody's called me by my last name like that since high school.
I'm sorry if it sounded like your mother.
It's okay. I think I'd be okay. I'm not sure if other people have different feelings with capping participation, but I would wonder if there's a way to prioritize so people who were on the program last year sort of get first call. Because again, I'm worried about changing people's household budgets on short notice in any meaningful way. Brandon looks like she knows the answer to my question though.
Yeah, I want to say that's something that sort of was already done. Everyone that was on last year, they reached out and did like a new application and approval. So the people that received it last year now have, like I said, this commitment that for the rest of the year, they're going to get X amount. So as long as we protect that, I think there's other things that we can do.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Other questions, comments, thoughts from board members?
Trevor, would you mind if I just give a little context? I know Christina shared this at the beginning, but so this discussion right now, right, is part of the first quarter budget revision process. So what's going to happen is whatever you all suggest today to make up the actual deficit we think we have, which is about 462,000, I think, if I remember correctly, that will go to the mayor, who's then going to put a proposal together for the whole muni, right, that the assembly will consider in April and vote on. So there will be an actual change to our budget in April. That doesn't mean later we can't have more discussions about, oh, if revenues are actually less than we thought, what do we do if we realize that in June, right? There can be a supplemental budget process where we make an adjustment there. But I think it's important that the board make a recommendation about how to cover that actual deficit that we've identified. And then the rest of it, like maybe the AFS possible reductions, could be just a discussion that we're starting today, just in terms of kind of what we need to do today. I thought that might be helpful.
That's great. Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
We have one in the room.
Just a question, when you were introducing it, did you all cover if this recommendation of the 2 cuts and then the third potential cut, if Bill or the administration had already kind of weighed in, or is that a conversation that happens later in the process that Austin was just talking about?
So for my, Bill's, welcome, Bill.
You can go first, but I go ahead. You go first, and then I'll agree with you.
I love that kind of support.
That's the
I was
kind of
just gonna-
answer, kind of thing she likes to hear, Bill. I like that.
Right?
Here to serve.
I was gonna say that we, that this is part of the process that we're providing a recommendation to them, and then they will weigh in on that.
I agree. Yes, I think we're trying to really take seriously the board's role, and so we want you guys to propose what you think the right solution is, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to just carry it forward.
Right. Any other
Part of the reason-
questions? Oh, go ahead, Kalia.
Well, part of the reason I was asking is because in one of the earlier slides, we were talking about, assembly priorities and all the different things we can take into consideration. And I thought I recall from when the mayor was here that she specifically brought up the startup type of support, which obviously is on our list. At the same time, I appreciate that we also want to prioritize the current continuity. So that's kind of why I was asking, because I kind of remember her bringing it up specifically.
I appreciate that. I remember it as well, but we're going to recommend these are the criteria that we should follow. And before we implement new, we need to keep the old, if it's working, stable. So hopefully they hear that, and also recognize by some of the decisions of bringing ASD and the assembly bringing over best beginnings, something has to give, and looking at it. So we'll have a good conversation, and I think Bill's quite aware of it. So go
Okay,
again,
so I
Kalia.
guess I'll comment now that I've asked my questions. I mean, overall, unfortunately, I have to agree that it does make sense to prioritize the continuity of those programs. I really liked the new programs that we had worked on proposing. So I hope that, given the budget, that maybe in a year or in, the next phase, that we can keep those up there in our conversation. But I do tend to agree in terms of, especially for the first few years, that it's even more important probably than normal to prioritize, the operations and the other buckets that we've done. So yeah, Trevor, Austin, and Christina, I appreciate the thought that went into those recommendations, and I'm on board. And I guess my only request is that as a team that we keep those others in our internal priority for future when we have more funding, essentially.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Christina, can you put up the slide with the recommendations so the board can see that, and then I can entertain a motion to either accept that a second, then put it to question or discussion, and modifications could be made if people want. Austin, great. So,
Oh, sorry.
oh yeah,
Is that what
Yeah,
you
let's
wanted?
do
Sorry,
that.
did you want something else?
I wanted just the slide that showed what was being
okay.
recommended versus.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christina.
That's okay.
I'm
Oh.
taking notes, trying to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
just so the
So,
board sees it. It's the second to last slide or whatever. Yes, recommendations.
yep, we will get you right there.
So we'll entertain a motion for these recommendations as outlined in this slide.
So moved.
Was that you, Chuck?
That was me.
Thank you. Just confirming. Do I have a second? I need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kevin. Open for discussion. Hearing none. Anybody abstain or oppose? Again, please verbalize. I can't see everybody.
Trevor, may I ask a
Hearing-
question?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt at this point, but so just hearing all of the questions that the board had about the early educator subsidies, this slide includes that recommendation, right? That if there were a need to reduce further, that's where we would reduce. I feel like that's a little inconsistent with the conversation we've had, which is we need to get more information and circle back on that. And so I don't know, maybe it's not appropriate for me to bring that up, but I'm wondering if the board should vote on the first two pieces and say yes, for sure. And then on that second AFS piece, anyway, proceed as you like.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was put before the board. They have made the motion and a second as
Okay.
outlined. And I will then follow up in the sense of next steps. So it's still open for conversation if people want to do any amendment.
This is Jessica. So the motion is to do bullet point number 1 and bullet point number 2 as needed, question mark?
Correct.
Okay.
If the budget stays as is, as presented, by not implementing the 2 new programs, it covers that deficit plus a little bit. If as dollars come in and revenue gets all finalized, because it takes time with finance, if it's greater than 500,000 of a total deficit, we would then look at the early educator childcare subsidy. As well as discussed, we will be working with the contractor, getting more detail and projections, and that we have the ability to do another budget amendment later with changes as we get more information. But we do need a plan, and this just gives us that plan upfront with more discussion yet to come based off of data. All right. Anybody object or abstain to the motion? Hearing none, it passes.
Sorry.
Oh,
I just can, could there be an amendment that we wouldn't do number 2 and reduce them more than what has already been pledged to the families for the year or something like that?
Second by Khalil.
So 1, yes, you could do an amendment to that. So could you restate what you would like as your amendment? And you might want to just suggest as a friendly amendment and the 2 individuals can just accept it. Kevin and Chuck.
I'm all for accepting it.
So for clarity, what is the amendment?
The amendment is that the second point of reducing early childcare subsidies, we would not reduce them more than what has already been pledged to the families for the year. Or does that make sense? We wouldn't reduce the total lower than what they would need in order to honor
Meet
their
the current pledge
commitment. Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good to me.
Chuck and Barry accept that friendly amendment. Fabulous. Thank you. Any other discussions? All right, 3rd time is a charm. Does anybody abstain or object? Hearing none, it passes. Great. Great conversation, everybody. Really appreciate that. All right. And as mentioned, I'll work with Christina in Austin. We'll follow up. We'll get clearer numbers and projections to help us see exactly where this is going so we can be prepared and also provide some guidance to them as well as to ourselves of how this program is looking and expecting. So great.
I just want to follow up with all of that by saying this is a great mindset opportunity to be getting in these budget conversations and really thinking what, as a board, our priorities are, our philosophy of where we're going because very soon we will be starting to look at the 2027 budget. And so again, we'll be looking at how we want to utilize the funds that we have. We did propose to you all some recommendations that we felt like were appropriate for 2026, looking at not cutting taking away the programs we didn't start yet, putting a pause on that. But I think it's good to be thinking is that, Khalil mentioned we want to keep it as a priority that we do look at those in the future. So if we continue to move forward with the limited budget, we will need to make some decisions around what programs we're continuing, if we want to start new programs, et cetera. The other things that we could look at, we did reduce the pilots and capitals already by almost half from what they were last year, but we could continue to reduce that amount if we wanted. Again, we could look at the ASD contract, but then what are the repercussions of that? And making sure that, is it a priority to continue to sustain programs that are classrooms that are already open? Also looking at the operational grants, we can have discussions about who's eligible for those or what that looks like. So even if it's not reducing the amount, not continuing with the program, we could look at modifying current programs. So I just wanted to mention that there are many levers that we could pull in looking at what we want to do moving forward. And it's going to be important to think about what our priorities are when we are building future budgets. So.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, Bill is just mentioning to be right back. But the biggest thing, to be honest, is we need to have a really upfront conversation with municipality, with administration, and look at what's happening with ASD and Best Beginnings so that we're creating a budget and actually know what we have to work with versus unexpected things, recognizing things can happen at the end, but we need to be on a better same page. And we can't wait till September or October to hear what's happening and really have future conversations. That's going to be the key thing, because if you look at it, if we think about $5 million for 27 budget, if that's what we get right now, if they keep both of those in, that's just under half of the total dollars going towards those two programs. And what does that impact for what we've already implemented, especially with the understanding that those programs were never supposed to come over and we're supposed to stay with the alcohol tax. So there's some really hard conversations that we need to have in looking at things. So more to come on that. All right, we're a bit ahead of schedule, which is great. We're going to move over to a presentation by the Muni. Is Dawn and Darcy with us?
Hey, Trevor, I'm on. I have to check and see if Dawn's made it on yet.
Okay, great.
Give me just one moment, please.
Yeah, and as you do that, just to let you know, I have to step away at 10 o'clock. I have to join another event that I could not change as we were transitioning to this new schedule, and Jessica, as vice chair, will be taking over at that time. Just seeing as we wait. Fabulous. Thank you, Jessica.
So we have some options. While we wait for Dawn, if we want, we can take a quick break, or we can maybe move to item number 6C.
Well, let's just go to C if people need a bio break. So go ahead with that as we wait for Dawn.
Sure. This is all a good segue, what we talked about today, and Christina just mentioned this, and Trevor did too, that we're about to start our 2027 budget process. So just a reminder for the board that you will submit your budget by September 2nd to the mayor, who then incorporates the proposed 2027 budget into her larger budget that goes to the assembly in October. And the process leading up to that includes a code requirement that you all hold 2 hearings on the budget. One, what we've done in the past is hold one in April. So that's an initial initial discussion, and the code language is hold at least one public hearing annually prior to the required public hearing on the board's draft budget. So a total of 2 hearings to solicit ideas from the public for funding, programming, and policy. We solicit those ideas every meeting because we have an opportunity for public comment, and we really welcome and invite the public to participate. But just a reminder to those listening, the public, next month we'll specifically be seeking feedback from you on funding, programming, and policy as the board begins to shape its 2027 budget. That will then happen in May, June, and July before finalizing it in April or August. So we'll see you next month, public.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. Well, and as I said, we will start having conversations with the administration as well, and getting some clarity so we move forward in the right direction and with as clear a picture as possible. So I see Don just jumped on. Thank you, Don, for adjusting your schedule. We're for once ahead of schedule, so which is great. And Darcy's already on. So I'm going to turn it over to you two for your presentation, as well as over to Jessica to manage the meeting from here on. And everybody have a fabulous day. Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
Good morning. I see that my picture isn't on there. I love this computer sometimes. Apologies. I was actually trying to be on screen.
No worries.
Thank you for having us and working this into your agenda. I know that this wasn't originally part of your plan. And then I am ready to go through the presentation. Christina, are you able to pull it up and share?
Yes.
Or whoever's working their magic there with the tech?
Yeah, magic is something you can say loosely since I'm clearly struggling, but yes, I will have it pulled up. One second.
Technology is always doing its own magic.
Right? Okay.
It's nice to connect with everyone. It's been a few minutes since I last saw all of you.
Okay, hold on while I get it pulled up.
No problem.
I don't want to have to get a little arrow, carrot, see if you can just spin. Just close that one.
Okay. Here we come. Thank you for pausing while we had technical difficulties.
Aha, okay, there we go. So as for childcare licensing, we visited this territory a year ago, as some of you may remember. We are very interested in doing what we can to problem solve the childcare crisis in Anchorage. And it is kind of a multi-pronged approach where all the partner agencies are really doing everything they can, from the state's child care program office to the governor's task force to Thread. Everybody's doing what they can to pull together and really problem solve what we can do to provide more childcare in Anchorage and make it more accessible for families. It's been a problem, and one of the things that we can do is revisit our code and see if there are areas that we can reduce barriers, clean up the code in sections that may no longer work. 1655 came into existence and was approved by the Assembly in September of 2004. So at that time, we were really kind of cutting edge with some of the things that were proposed and were approved. And since then, it's become clear that some of the codes just really don't work. And with the change in needs in the community, some of the codes don't work because we've discovered they're just kind of broken codes that don't, when you have even if the intentions are the best intentions, but we keep finding things that we are finding non-compliances for all the time, then maybe that's a section of the code we need to revisit. So there's a little bit of that we've been examining, and there's some of the things that we've looked at for requirements that can we change them to make them more amenable to families and facilities. So that's where we're going a second time. We did this last year, and that's where we're going again. So thank you for the time to be able to present this. And with the agenda, these are the things we're going to cover in the next little while. This should actually not be a very long presentation, but we wanted to be able to go over the history, a review of the governor's administrative order briefly, what we're trying to do to reduce barriers, a quick review of what some of the round one changes were in AMC 1655, and some of the requirements that are always going to be in existence. As long as 1655 exists, we are not the same entity as, excuse me, we're not the same entity as the state. So some things, in order to collaborate with the state but still have a little bit of autonomy within the municipality, some things are always going to be required in 1655. Then there's a couple of different sections where we have proposed changes noted, and then crosswalks as to how those changes correlate with some of the state requirements and how this will better align us. And then a quick review of benefits that we're proposing, what our next steps are, and then a list of our resources and contact information. I hope you guys can't hear that. I'm getting pop-ups from another meeting, and I'm afraid if I mute it.
I think you're good, Dawn. I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, good, because the pop-up things from are distracting for me, so I'm glad that it's not interfering for anyone else. With the little bit of history for this round, the municipality's jurisdiction is from Girdwood to the Knik River Bridge. The State of Alaska's Child Care Program Office does everything else. Geographically, their area is clearly enormous. Population-wise, though, ours is much more concentrated. We each do, I would say it's pretty close to half and half. It seems to vary a little bit, but we're pretty close to doing the same work, and we try in as much as possible to align and do it the same way. It makes it much easier for the community, especially if somebody is moving from one jurisdiction to another. So that's the jurisdiction, and what our goal is to align with them. The next bullet kind of mentions the codes that we work with, and there's a few. 1655, and then as we work with that, how does that align with or in collaboration with 4732, 4705, Alaska Administrative Codes 10 and 57. So it's a little bit of a juggling act sometimes to coordinate the codes. In August of 2016, we let go of some of our policies and procedures. We adopted the state's codes. We minimized most of the requirements that were duplicative in AMC 1655. We eliminated at that time because we were adopting the state's child care codes and policies and procedures. And then last year on July 15th, we made some changes that were approved by the Assembly. And we had several things that we didn't add anything other than one small requirement the Assembly wanted regarding liability insurance. We weren't looking to add, we were looking to pull things out that would make it easier for operational choices with facilities without reducing the health and safety for children. Next slide, please. I would guess that a lot of people, without making assumptions here, but a lot of people in this group specifically are going to have been familiar, at least in various levels, with the task force that the governor put together. And in 2023, the task force was comprised of a multitude of people who came together regarding childcare to try and figure out where they could make some recommendations that would contribute towards problem solving our childcare shortage. There were 33 recommendations in the first report and 23 in the second. And the goals and focal points were to try and increase accessibility, affordability, and while maintaining quality at the same time. And so in looking at some of those specifically, there was one set of the recommendations that addressed licensing. And so we have taken those into account. We read through those and took that seriously. And so these code changes are a part of that. How can we reduce barriers, still ensure quality and safety, and support families who need childcare, as well as facilities, administrators, and staff who are trying to provide that care. Next slide, please. So in reducing the barriers to childcare, this office has, we made a decision last year to start examining our code, and we had been going through it for a while, and that was the first set of code changes that came through. And then we're doing it again because, and I do believe this will be the final time we need to do it, but we're doing it again because there's still some need out there, and there's some areas our code can be cleaned up. We have developed web-based forms that can be accessed a couple different ways for administrators and for applicants. They can go through the website, the municipality's website, or they can go through what's mentioned in the third barrier with our new database, and they can access our forms and complete them online and submit them online. It's much easier, and it brings us much further into the 21st century. So we're happy to have done that. And then to support the applicants as they're trying to work their way through the process the first time, and our existing facilities. And then the new database is the Alaska Child Care Information System, and ACCESE we've now been live with it almost a year and a half, and we continue to roll out new changes with it. And with each new change, it is really exciting to see how it's really going to benefit everyone by being, it's going to be so much more streamlined. And in a lot of ways it still is. There are some things that we're still working on, but it was a huge transition. It was a massive accomplishment from the Child Care Program Office to get this underway and get us updated from the previous database we were using that had been in use at the time 19 years and was becoming on a daily basis more archaic. And so this new database it's a huge, huge accomplishment. So these are some of the ways that we are individually as an office reducing some of the barriers, while and also collaborating with the Child Care Program Office for the state to reduce barriers for applicants and families. Next slide, please. So a year ago, some of the proposed changes that we had that did go through, we took away all the fees that were associated with licensing, and they weren't a lot, but anything that we could look at where we could reduce some expenses, make it easier for facilities, we did. And so there's no longer any type of annual fee, change fees, or plan review fees. And this aligns with the state too. They don't have fees. And this piece of it was one of those steps we could do to support facilities. We removed the requirement for liability insurance. It was amended. They do have to make a statement about it now. Facilities do in their policies to let parents know if they have or do not have it. But we no longer require it. It is a business choice, which is what we wanted to be able to provide to them, was a little bit more operational flexibility. We did increase capacity from 6 to 8 in a licensed home during the provisional year. This also aligns with state requirements, and it opens up for each new home that we open, it opens up the potential for 2 more spaces for children. And while that isn't necessarily a huge increase, it is a step in opening spaces for families and availability. We increased the infant ratio and school age ratios in centers. And again, those are now in alignment with the state, and it opens up more spaces for each of those 2 age groups. We removed the minimum age of 6 weeks in a center. that one's been in place for a long time. It's not, it wasn't a requirement in the state's regs, and it again provides more decision-making at the center level on what age range they prefer to open that opportunity for families. We remove the requirement for 2 caregivers to be present. It no longer has to be a caregiver. It can be an adult with an approved background who has the authority and permission to be present in the facility. And in some cases, they no longer have to have 2 people. So if that is, again, is a business decision that they can make based on their operations and the way they function, knowing their own programs. We removed the requirements for some of the bathroom specific requirements that were in 1655. And at the time they were put in 2004, they were good trend setting, future thinking requirements as far as the height of walls and doors to be able to supervise. It was a requirement if anybody was remodeling or if they were opening a new facility. They were great intentioned codes right there. But what we found, and some facilities are able to do this, and overall what we found though is that it was cost prohibitive for some of our existing buildings. They would want to do it, they'd want to make updates or changes and then come back and say, wow, it's going to cost $60,000 to add 1 more toilet because we don't have plumbing that does such and such. So we were able to reevaluate this last year. It now aligns with state requirements. And it's much more user-friendly with the bathroom requirements for facilities. Then we amended language and clarified when centers are required to have playground inspections. So all of those things were proposed about this time of year last year. They went out to the public, they went out to the facilities, and then they were approved by the Assembly on July 15th of 2025. Next slide, please. This is a list of codes that as long as 1655 is in existence and the jurisdictions are separate from the state and the municipality, these will always have to be in existence for the muni. We're always going to have to note the title and purpose, how we do separate hearings and appeals. All of these through 110 through 40 will always be a requirement. They'll never be able to change. Next slide, please. What we are looking for and the positive outcomes with these recommended changes are multifaceted. We want to be able to provide support and benefits for the facilities as well as the community at large. We're intending to reduce the regulatory burdens on facilities by opening up some of our codes and putting decision-making more into their own hands based on their operational needs. We're looking at aligning more with state regulations so it's a little less confusing and more consistent. And I've mentioned repeatedly, because this is part of where we're going with operational flexibility for the facilities. And then part of this, this last bullet, it's the last bullet on facility and the last bullet on community. We're really wanting to support the facilities at being able to recruit and retain staff. And at the same time, we're wanting to support the idea of making childcare a sector that people want to go into. They're interested in it. They love children. How can I work with children? How can I make it a career? How can I dedicate my future to this? So that's on both levels. Those are what we're wanting to help support, is how can facilities recruit and retain staff, and how can it be more inviting so that when somebody goes through the interview process and they say, yeah, this is what I want to do, then they don't look and go, oh my word, I have to do all this training and fill all this out and I have to do all these things before I can even accept the job. So we want to take a two-pronged approach as supporting the community and getting people into the facilities and wanting to stay there to work and provide these services for families. We're hoping that together the benefits promote more sustainable childcare that enhances quality, access, and supports the community well-being. Next slide, please. So for round 2 changes, they really are not enormous. What we're looking at is they're pretty basic changes, but they will be beneficial to the facilities as well as families. So the very first thing that we were looking at was eliminating a definition, a couple of definitions, because they're no longer applicable. They're either outdated or outdated or duplicative in the state. So that was more of a cleanup effort. In 100, we're looking at, this is one that we've reviewed. It's still under a bit of a review because we're working with fire and building, but it's looking really promising. So under 100, we're wanting to just remove this code in general because what it says is the administrator in a child care home either has to reside in that home or no one resides in the home, so that the administrator is either the one that's there and knows every single thing about the health, the safety, the preparation, everything about that home, or no one lives there, so that you don't have another individual living there who's not meeting the requirements of health and safety. Then we have somebody coming in providing care there and they don't know what the resident has done the night before if they're not the ones living in it. If we remove this entirely, we can lean into 1655-240, which does require other agencies, that requires facilities to maintain requirements of other agencies. As I'm working with fire, I'm trying, and it's looking pretty promising right now. As I'm working with fire, they are also looking into policies, previous policies, current policies, codes for fire and building, and not land use. That would be the separate one. But whether or not this requirement exists, does somebody have to reside in a child care home? Because if they do not, it opens up a little bit more opportunity. We have people that say, well, I want to do this, but I own a duplex and I'd like to do it next door in my empty duplex instead of having to turn my residence upside down to meet the requirements. I'd like to do it next door. And for the last several years, we were told that this was not a possibility. They're reviewing that and it looks like it might be. So if we can get rid of this code, it would really be beneficial. 1655-140 requires outdated requirements with adolescent staff. So the state codes have a corresponding requirements in 57-320 that outlines requirements for adolescent staff. But 1655-140 went into much greater detail. And over the years, we've discovered that greater detail isn't necessary in all of those areas because the state covers some of it. And we're not looking to get rid of all of the extra requirements, but some of them that would make it easier for adolescents to meet the requirements, to want to come on board, and it would make it easier for facilities to hire teens. The teenage support that is provided in especially our school age programs is really crucial. And so if we can support the facilities and potential adolescents that want to go in and work with children, we want to be able to do that. So we can simplify these requirements while not jeopardizing health and safety. 1655-1. Oh,
sorry, this is Darcy. I just wanted to jump in to let everybody know this is like a basic overview, but we have crosswalks coming to give you a little more information. So just wanted to let you know that. Thank you, Darcy. I didn't see your hand up. 1655-150. This one I'm really happy about. This is one that has been a little bit problematic. Again, was implemented in 2004. And in September of 2004, we all know how much technology has changed in 21 and a half years. So at the time this was put in place, the code actually states that 75% of all the training that home administrators take must be taken in person. And at that time, it was much more reasonable. We didn't have countless websites that provide high quality training like we do now. And there was a reason for it. We wanted them to network. We wanted them to connect with each other in person. Well, fast forward all these years later, and they can get extremely high quality training online, still connect with one another through virtual trainings, and it's much more convenient. These in-person trainings have proven to be really challenging for facilities, especially post-COVID, because they're not offered quite as frequently. And it's
it's been very challenging for them. We have a lot of home providers that might put in a 10 or a 12-hour day. They say goodbye to their children, and parents are picking up, they leave, they close the door, and then they're trying to race out the door to get across town to an in-person training for an hour or two in the evenings. And their day might have started at 6:30 in the morning. And by the time they finish that training, it's 9 o'clock at night, and they have to turn right around and be ready at 6:30 the next morning. This has really been a bit of a burdensome requirement for home administrators. So this one, we are really looking forward to being able to provide to them as an opportunity to say, nope, you don't have to do this anymore. And that will align us more with the state. The other piece of this that we will be looking at eliminating is antiquated requirements that have been in 1655 since September of 2004 regarding first aid and CPR. At that time, we had a ratio, and how many, 1 to 20 people in a center had to be certified for first aid and CPR, and at least one person in an infant room had to be certified. Well, fast forward all these years, the state has updated their code a couple of times, and we haven't kept up with it with the Muni. And now every caregiver is required to have first aid CPR at all times. It's a much better requirement, and it covers safety much better, and it makes this one look even more antiquated. We need to get rid of this one. So that's the proposal for 150. For 210, this is another one that will benefit families as well as facilities. So the state does not require annual physicals for children. And we did it originally as an additional health and safety measure. And what we've discovered over the years is it's not the best determining factor as to the health and safety of children. It becomes an additional burden to families to keep up with them, to take time off work to get their children there. It depends on whether or not a family has medical coverage and insurance as to whether or not it is going to be a financial burden. And then for facilities, it becomes another date of tracking. And even in a home, if they have 6 or 8 kids, it doesn't necessarily seem like, well, that's not that many. But when you're working 10 or 12 hours a day, trying to provide great quality care for these children, and then in addition to that, you're keeping up with additional record keeping, that then is not necessarily indicative of what the initial intention was. This is something we can remove that will be helpful to facilities as well as families. And we find that inadvertently, this is a non-compliance quite often, because as we're doing records, somebody's been missed and they've been here, their physical is outdated, but it's not necessarily the best indicator of their health. They're still going to be required to complete immunizations, but the physicals are not necessarily helpful. So we're proposing to remove this requirement. 220 is, again, at the time, it was, I don't know that I'd say trend setting, but it was a good requirement. It's more specific with when they have to provide snacks and meals, what the components should be, low sugar contents. It was a good requirement at the time, but we fast forward to today, and the state's requirement already demonstrates that even if a facility is not being reimbursed through the federal child care food program, they still have to meet those requirements. So it's already outlined in the state requirements. This one is a bit duplicative, and it will be helpful and less confusing to get rid of it. So we're proposing that we repeal this one. And then 300 is the last one, and it was created, this would have been, and was at the time, kind of cutting edge to create an entire center that would be serving sick children if necessary. And it was really created around meeting the needs of the hospitals, because they have first responders who have to be there. So they don't have an option. If their kids are sick, they still need that care. And in 21 and a half years, we've never had to open a sick center. It's never been required. We looked into it. We've had a couple of programs that maybe had kind of an interest, but we came all the way through a pandemic and never did this. This was not implemented. So, and it is a big detailed section in 1655 that really isn't effective. So we're looking at requesting this one be repealed as well. Next slide, please. So the crosswalk in the next couple of slides is a different way of looking at what I pretty much just covered. 100 talks, and this one was the one with requiring an administrator to live in the residence if it's a licensed facility. And the state regs don't require this. We're looking into local zoning and fire. I'm not even sure it's going to be necessary at all. But what we were looking at originally doing was eliminating this code and leaning into 16.55.240, where they have to meet other agency requirements. And it may turn out to even be better than what I was hoping for, leaning into 16.55.240, because we may not have to have this one. I'm still working with fire, but I've gotten some emails back and forth that are making it look like we can open this up a lot more. So next slide, please. And then this one was the adolescent caregivers and some of the requirements that are a little bit more stringent than what the state requires. We can eliminate these, still provide opportunities that open up the opportunities for adolescents, teens to go to work in childcare and still meet the health and safety and not jeopardize children's safety. There's a limit on how many teenage staff can be in a program at one time. There are requirements already outlined in the state. Next slide, please. And I just went in quite a bit of detail about this one with staff training requirements, but the idea behind this is that our requirements were great at the time they were implemented, but over time we've discovered they're not necessary in the way that we had originally intended. And over time, they worked great for several years, but since COVID, it has become very apparent that the 75% requirement to have in-person training is really outdated. And then it's completely obsolete to continue having the requirements outlined in 16.55 regarding first aid CPR. So we can really update this one. Slide. Oh, here we go. Sorry, it changed and I didn't even see it. This one was, again, the physical exams, and we can make it easier for facilities and parents. It's one less date everyone has to track. It's less time off work for parents to get their children back and forth. And most of them are doing this anyway. So the requirement isn't necessarily, they're still doing this. Most people are still having their children get physicals, but it will no longer be a requirement for them to be on file. So this just does not, over the years, has not proven that it really contributes towards determining the overall health of children. Facilities know their children. They communicate with their families. They usually will do a head to toe when the kids come in, and they know what their typical behavior is and when they're not feeling well. And so the physicals really just don't all contribute a whole lot towards that. So we'd like to eliminate this one. Next slide, please. I think that was nutrition coming up. Yeah. And again, this one is the crosswalk that nutrition is noted in 57, the state's codes in 57.560. And the state's codes have been updated a couple of times since this one was. And so while this was a good code, excuse me, at the time that it was created, over time, it hasn't kept up with the state requirements, and it isn't helpful anymore. And then next slide. And I think the last one, this is the 6 centers. The state doesn't have anything like this. And again, it was a really good thought when it was put into place, but it has never been used. And it doesn't need to continue being outlined in the detail that it is when it is a code that, if it was going to be used after 21 and a half years, somebody would have implemented it, especially going through a global pandemic. So this is a section that we can do cleanup on. Next slide. So I briefly touched base on some of the benefits on when we started, but what we're really hoping to be able to provide to families and facilities is increased operational flexibility, which is what we leaned into last year with some of the proposed changes. We're looking at reducing some of the regulatory and administrative burdens for them. Cost and time saving by eliminating outdated and unnecessary requirements. We do have a few of those, and we're happy to be addressing them at this time. Focusing resources so that facilities can deliver high quality childcare. We want them to have an easier time with recruitment and retention. And this will better align us overall with the state, especially regarding facilities or applicants that may be moving from one jurisdiction to another. The community, in benefiting all of the facilities, will then also have a secondary benefit to the communities. As facilities, we're hoping I'll be able to open easier, remain open easier, so that access is easier for families, while we're still implementing health and safety measures and supporting high quality. We want youth opportunities to exist so that young people with the adolescent caregivers really want to go into this field. We want to recruit young people to look at the early childhood sector as something that they're interested in doing. So that's that two-pronged approach, supporting facilities so that they can hire them, and then making it easier once they say, hey, when can you start? These are the things we need to do. So that list of beginning things that somebody has to do when they first get on board doesn't feel quite so labor intensive as a young person. And it might be their first job is coming on board and thinking, yeah, it would be easier to go work at Holiday. That's not what we want. So we're hoping to support families and the community with engaging young people in employment in the early childhood sector too. Clearer and more consistent regulations that are easier to understand and follow. We do get calls quite often from the community to say, hey, I don't get this. Why is it a requirement? And so we want it to be really clear that we can point right to it and say, yep, this is what's required, or no, they don't have to do that. It's not required. We want to support our programs with services that meet the health and safety and educational standards, and strengthening the overall community through childcare services. Our next steps, we're looking at this presentation to all of you. Thank you for your time and for inviting us. I know it seems your agendas are usually really packed, so we appreciate the effort Christina made to work this in and make it available so that we could talk to you today. Thank you for that. We've already sent out an email with the proposed next steps to facilities. It was sent out as a group email to all of our facilities, and then each individual specialist also sent the information through their own emails to make sure that administrators got it and they didn't bypass this. We want them to know the proposed changes are also on our website, so that we are trying to get the word out, and we want them to know what we're doing. There'll be a work session or a meeting in some manner with the assembly coming up the next few weeks where we'll be discussing these things. Then there'll be a formal presentation where we go to the assembly for approval. The approved changes will then go on our website as they did last year. Those changes are still on our website. And then we'll forward the approved updates to the CCPO office for Child Care Program and incorporate them into the database so that everything is accurate, and the information that's in our database when we're doing inspections reflects the changes that we're proposing. And then we will follow up with a survey to see how this is impacting, hopefully in a positive manner, our facilities. And then these are a list of resources. Slide, please. And that's it. I feel like I have just talked and talked and talked and talked. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Is there anyone with any questions that I could address?
Thank you so much, Dawn and Darcy. I'd like to open it up to any comments or questions from board members.
Okay. Well, and this kind of puts everybody on the spot right now anyway. So if there are questions that come up, I have been living with this for a little while. I know what we're proposing. We are the ones that made these suggestions. So if anything does come up, feel free to reach out to our office. I'm happy to answer questions. I know there's a couple people on here who have specialists. They can reach out at any time, talk to your specialist. We want to make sure that we are addressing questions and eliminating anything or including anything that we might not have thought of. So we do want feedback. If something comes up, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Hey, Dawn, I have a specific question if nobody else is raising their hand yet. What specifically, I know you said changing some of the barriers for adolescent employees. And without the state code in front of me, what do you see as the biggest change from what we're doing now and eliminating that to just going to what the state is requiring? Can you define that for the group?
Yeah, those are good questions. So one of the things, so we had a couple of things that were additional. We had, I just pulled up AMC 1655 on a different computer so I could see what some of the specifics were. We had it so that there was an, let me look at this. Like the individual has to work under the direct supervision of and in the same room as an adult caregiver. And they do have to work under somebody with experience, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be in the exact room. And we had one that said that no more than 25% of the caregivers could be 16 or 17. The state requirement, and I apologize, that I don't have pulled up right now in front of me for the state. So when we did the side by side, we were eliminating, one of our things said they had to have a TB test. Well, the state hasn't required a TB test in a long time, but it was still in the city's requirements. We wanted, one of our forms said that they had to have a self-prepared health history. Well, that was a requirement 20 years ago for staff, and it was still in this with adolescents. It talks about a release of information that had to be included. Well, now they have to have backgrounds, and at the time our backgrounds were handled differently. It's more streamlined now to do backgrounds through the state system. They had to submit current immunizations for themselves because they were minors. So we're proposing some of those things be eliminated. One of the things, there was specifically orientation for working with babies, and infants. Well, there is training that's required, and that is covered. So this piece was duplicative. So we're trying to streamline it and align more with the state. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So
Okay.
from what you're saying as well, it just is for those minor employees. We're not touching any of the requirements for, say, like administrators or anything like that.
No, the requirements for the administrators and caregivers that are outlined in 57.310 is one section, and those are all staying the same. These requirements are specifically for adolescent caregivers. I didn't realize that's where your question was targeting. Yes, these requirements are specific to teenagers who want to get into the field, but they're not yet 18. And they are still required to meet all the same training requirements. They have to take all the same pre-training. They have to have first aid CPR. So those elements of ensuring health and safety are still going to be a requirement. But this is strictly for teenagers who want to work in the field. And we want them to work in the field. We've got great teens who provide tremendous support.
Absolutely, especially, after they get out of school and they're wanting to pick up something and get started.
Yeah. And this is a great way to entice them. We want the field to be enticing to young people. So if we can help with, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, no, sorry to interrupt you. I was just gonna highlight, I do have the state requirements for the adolescent caregiver that I can highlight really quickly if that helps.
That'd be beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, so the caregiver has completed a childcare training course or demonstrated competency in childcare to the administrator's satisfaction. So that goes back to the orientation required.
Mm-hmm.
The caregiver works under supervision of an adult caregiver, and the caregiver works within sight or sound of the adult caregiver. So that's that supervision piece. And caregivers younger than 18 years of age make up no more than 1/4 of the total caregiving staff on
Right.
duty.
Right.
So those will
Thank
still
you.
be in place.
Those will still be in place.
And so where they're in sight and sound, they would now count in ratio?
Correct.
Yes, and there have been times that that's what this is set up. They can count in ratio if they're meeting, and I think that's even what the lead-in language on the state code says, is they can count if they meet the following criteria.
Thank you, Dawn. I just wanted to clarify that in case anybody had questions.
I appreciate that. We're open to questions. We want this process to be really transparent and supportive of facilities while still maintaining health and safety and quality for childcare facilities. So I appreciate the questions. That's great.
Does anybody else from the board have any comments or questions for Dawn and Darcy about the proposed changes?
Is anybody excited about the changes?
Oh, good question.
Yay.
Thank you.
Nice. Then it's all worthwhile.
Okay, so we want to entertain a motion to support these community code changes as they go forward and are recommended to the assembly. So I'd like to entertain a motion to consider board supporting that.
So moved.
Chuck.
Second.
And Khalil second, thank you. Any amendments or comments needed before we consider the motion? Hearing none, is there anybody that's opposed to the board supporting these community code changes or abstaining? By your silence, it passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Dawn, Darcy, for joining us. We definitely appreciate you keeping us up to date and being able to give input.
Thank you so much for having us. One thing I do want to say is we're hoping to present this to the assembly in April, and we will share when we anticipate getting that on the assembly. But we do want to encourage you and ask you to also encourage others to come to those assembly meetings. I know with the round one changes, we did have a little bit of a surprise from the assembly with one of the amendments that were done. And so we just want everybody to have the opportunity to represent and speak.
Absolutely. Well said, Darcy. Thank you.
Thank you. So are we ready to move on to the, we've basically done C?
Yep.
Okay. So then we can move on to member comments.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You. Have a great day.
You as well.
Want to start in the room?
Yes.
Thanks to Christina, Austin, and Trevor and Jessica for all the work behind the scenes and everything. I appreciate it. I thought the budget presentation was really helpful, both refresher and update. So that was useful for me.
I'm excited that, next month we're going to start our public hearing and see where we're at and start planning for next year.
Thank you for everyone for coming and those came in the room, just, I feel like Jessica, you saw it. It was just us two, and you're like, I'm getting there. I appreciate the conversation and everyone's input, and we really have been working hard behind the scenes to be able to present this to as a helpful and thoughtful conversation, and very much weighing your opinion. This is the board's decision, so really want to make sure you have all the information and have the opportunity to speak on what your preferences would be. So thank you.
Online, I see Kevin first.
Kevin said in the chat he was stepping away for a minute, so maybe we could end with him and see if he comes back.
Sure, then it's Chuck's turn.
Hello, everybody. I really appreciate the work that Christina and Austin did, and that kind of this what is not an easy decision or a fun conversation, but was brought as like, here, we've thought through what the options are, and here's our recommendation. I think the conversation would have been much more challenging if you were like, what do you want to cut? And then we kind of had to figure that all out as a board. So I think it really started in a grounded place, and I could understand the reasoning, and I really appreciated that approach to it, and think it really helped move things along. So thank you to both of you, and it's good to see everybody.
Branley?
I agree with Chuck. I thought that was a helpful way to do that efficiently, and I appreciate everyone being flexible though with the weird last minute questions. And kind of going back to the very beginning, I liked Trevor's idea about setting certain meetings where it was like, okay, this one we want to try and prioritize as being in person, because that would help me to kind of give me a little push that like, okay, I can make it downtown and meet with you guys in person.
Is Kevin back with us? Austin, do you have any member comments?
Sure. I wanted to say that Christina's doing an awesome job, and just all of this budget work. I mean, she emailed me some information at 11 p.m. last night. So that's kind of where we're at. Constant changes. We've been going back and forth. It's been such a fun partnership, and she also just brings so much knowledge about the sector, and I couldn't feel better about handing over all of this work I've been doing to her. So just wanted to say that to all of you. And yeah, just as I'm thinking about going, just how great this board is and how thoughtful, right? Like your first consideration with the budget is how it will impact families. And that's how it should be. And proud to work with you all.
Last chance, Kevin. Okay, then we can adjourn a little bit early, 10:46. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us. And we'll be following up with an email maybe to prioritize this or that in meetings. Yes.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
But it can stop, so it does.